Look, I think we're all in agreement that we want to find a way to include everyone in sport, but there is overwhelming evidence that males have an insurmountable performance advantage over comparative females. Now, community sport is our pathway to elite, so having meaningful competition is actually just as important at community level. Like, I know there's lots of people that like playing it socially, but there's also lots of females that like winning, and if they don't, they may give up the sport. So, we already risk losing so many of them through their teenage years. Placing male bodies in their changing rooms and in their sports teams could just exacerbate that issue. So I guess I have a concern about that. The guidelines have obviously been developed solely through the lens of a transgender player, and they ignore the voices of female players, of our club volunteers who are really, really hard to get, and our officials with how they might deal with potential dangers on a sports field. So I understand you guys have spent like over $4.7 million on surveys over the last few years. Have you surveyed your female athletes or your club officials or your volunteers to find out how these guidelines may impact them and how they would feel about it?
Thank you, Ro. Rebecca, do you want to lead on this one, or would you like me to?
I think, Nikki, you're probably best to talk about from the research perspective and the consultation piece. But yeah, Ro, I think some really valid points raised. And yeah, I guess back to my earlier point about that not being the only reason people participate in community sport, take the point that there are some people who do like to compete. There is a pathway piece there. And I mean, I know anecdotally, and Nikki can touch on anything specific, that absolutely we've consulted with, and hopefully we are during this process, participants across the board. And sorry, one other thing before I throw to Nikki, yeah, I guess just to make sure I've heard your question, is it, have you consulted with them, or is there another, I guess, point you were making?
Yeah, well, have you actually done a survey with, female athletes, with the club officials and volunteers? Because at the end of the day, these are the people that are going to be impacted by these inclusion guidelines. How do club volunteers, sports volunteers, ensure safeguarding, in changing rooms and on team trips? If females are having to share dormitories with male bodies, there's so many different implications to this. And I think, well, I applaud you for doing the work on these guidelines. They're actually missing a whole raft of voices. It's just one voice that we're getting through these guidelines, and it's a really important voice, don't get me wrong, but it actually just ignores all the ramifications. If a female is playing a male, if a female is playing a male transgender athlete, for instance, in rugby, and they're concerned about their health and safety and they raise an issue, are they going to be disciplined? Because I read these guidelines and it almost feels like they'll be the ones that are in trouble if they say, look, I'm not comfortable, or if they're sharing their changing rooms with the male body and they raise concerns about that. We saw what happened at Penn University with Leah Thomas, and how the female voices in that team were just shut down completely. I mean, they were offered mental health counselling to deal with it, which is, completely insulting. So
yeah,
I guess it's just understanding, have you thought through all of these issues? Because we do not see that in these guidelines.
Now, Ro, I'm not going to claim that we've thought through every issue, because I'm pretty sure, as we've said before, that when we come to the implementation stage and we're supporting codes to develop their own policies, we'll all come across scenarios that we have to figure out a way forward on. But what I would stick to is that actually this isn't about the voice of transgender people as much as it's about being relevant for community. So we do expect inclusion of all of the community in community activities, and transgender people are part of our community. That is fundamental, and we're not. So really, that's what this headlines, right? When it comes to implementation, yes, there will be some challenges, and we're not going to be leaving people in the cold to work them through on their own. We will be expecting robust engagement in the development of those policies. They won't be developed behind closed doors. But when it comes to signalling to the sector that inclusion is important, we do mean that. So we're wanting people to find mitigations. We're not wanting to be in an environment where we're kind of saying this is really hard, so we're just going to exclude a group of people. I guess can you kind of see that that's where we're coming from?
Yeah, I can, but I think what you've done, through the development of this, you've actually, trying to include a group of people and where they want to be included, it actually ignores the rights of, half the population. and their feelings about this. It's all about, like, don't get me wrong, we need to find a way to include our transgender community. We totally do. Sport is so good for our mental and physical health, but I'm worried about the mental health of females who have to, deal with male bodies. It's not, it's a really difficult issue, but I just wish that the guiding principles had acknowledged this conflict, this colliding rights issues in them, because at the moment they don't. It's just we have to do this and we're ignoring the impacts.
I really take your point on that. And I guess what we're saying is we're not prescriptive with the guiding principles. So we're saying, yes, we have to do this, but we're not defining how. And I think there's scope in the mitigation space and the policy space to kind of counterbalance everybody's needs and make sure that everybody is safe. But I don't think it will be very easy for us to do that at the overarching level and still be inclusive in the way that we intend to be. So taking on board your point, I think your feedback is valuable. We will work through these issues, but fundamentally this isn't easy, but inclusion is just a requirement because we have transgender people in our communities. So we have to find a way.
We also need to make sure that we've got meaningful competition for females, and we don't undermine the integrity of the female category. Like, females have fought long and hard to get a good place in sport, and this just has the potential to really upend that, and I guess that's where our concerns are.
Yeah, and women and girls are a priority for us as well, for Minister too. So
we spend a lot of money trying to keep them in sport. We don't want to. Yeah.
So we don't want to undo that good work either. So I think it's important that we emphasise that too. Like, this isn't about prioritising transgender inclusion to the exclusion of everything else. It's just an important piece of work that we need to do around all of our programme of inclusion. I mean, Rebecca, would you add anything there? Because I feel like I don't want to step into your previous space.
No, I agree. I agree with both of you. 100% very, very important stakeholders, and the most important piece over the next coming time around support and implementation will be making sure that, to the extent we can, and let's own the fact that we might not always get it 100% right, to the extent we can, everybody is considered and taken into account and is safe.
Thanks.
Thank you.